looking for. And on the work front, I unfortunately, we have gotten a little, I guess, another 2 weeks delay here from Alex Salkever to try and publish the end of this, the prologue for the white paper, but I will push that forward. Today, I was hoping to mainly get a recount of the CNTT meetings and to talk about the takeaways from that, and then related to that, where we are with the test suite. Any comments or people want to interject, or else I will hand it over to Taylor. Okay, Taylor, could you go ahead?
Sure. Do we want to jump right into the CNTT virtual conference?
Your call.
All right. I could give a little bit of status on the CNF conformance, and then maybe other folks that were also on the CNTT virtual conference can speak up. On the CNF conformance, there's been a continuation of testing on the workload. There's several new workload tests that are going into place, and we're moving towards a MVP set of tests that we'd like to have for folks to be able to run and look at the results for CNF specifically, or the workload, and start getting more feedback. Along with that, there's been improvements on running, getting the actual suite set up, and ensuring that it's as easy as possible to get started with that. And on the platform side itself, there's been some further work on the requirements, mapping requirements to test the coverage that's already there in the Kubernetes, and that's on for the folks who haven't seen it, there's a spreadsheet that we've been working on with CNTT folks that's going over the various chapters. Probably the biggest chapter that's going to be the most relevant right now is chapter 2 from the CNTT RE2 spec, and that's loaded up into the spreadsheet, and the efforts are kind of multifold on this. So one of them is looking at priority within CNTT for the requirements on this. Would be, is the requirement something that's a must-have, or is it just an optional type of thing? And then likewise, looking at cloud native testing. Is it something that's in scope, or is it out of scope for testing, at least right now? Or is it something that we think is a must-have if you're looking at cloud native testing? So trying to determine that, and the effort related to that for the mapping to any existing tests. So we have the Kubernetes conformance program. There's categories within that I think we can get some idea of how they map to coverage, and then the tests specifically. Beyond that, though, there's a lot of Kubernetes E2E tests that should show some light on requirements that are in these. One thing that happened this past week was a major restructuring and update on the CNTT RE2 docs. So there will be some effort to update the spreadsheet to match those chapters, probably working with Bill and Tom and some of the other folks that helped on the PRs on CNTT and see how we want to do these. For now, the spreadsheet has the, on the chapter 2, if you're viewing that, the chapter 2 has the actual commit for when it was relevant. So some of the naming may be different. At the moment, I think we will probably just mark if requirements naming is changed, because we may find that the test, even if they're not relevant for a specific chapter in CNTT, are still relevant to help inform the CNF conformance for potential platform coverage that we would like to see tested from a cloud native perspective. So we got to figure out, I guess the point would be we need to figure out what requirements are most relevant for both CNTT on the specifications for the implementation side, and what's relevant to cloud native testing. And sometimes the goals overlap and sometimes they diverge. But overall, it seems to be helpful and has driven conversations on the CNTT, RA, and RI meetings, as well as the CNTT, RC conformance meetings. Last week, those tied into the CNTT virtual conference, and going into specifically on the conformance or certification for CNTT and the different projects like OVP and the CNTT needs, as well as the CNF conformance, and trying to determine how where things overlap and there can be collaboration, and where things may diverge with different goals. And I think in the end, the CNTT certification is going to encompass quite a few efforts to cover a broad range of requirements.
So Taylor, this is Sukhdev Kapur from Juniper. I have one quick question for you. So in the CNTT's networking focus group, we are working on bringing in some SDN type of controllers into the RC1, RC2, and hence into reference implementation and reference conformance too. And in that regard, the question I have for you is that we're going to be we're going to be installing, like, for instance, tungsten fabric on some of the pods in the OPNFV reference implementations. And how would that map onto the CNCF test bed, which you manage on the CNCF side? Would there be any synergies, or can we work together on making sure that whatever we are doing on the CNTT side sort of maps into what's on the CNCF test bed side? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. So I'd say the first part would be the RI2 efforts right now. The idea is to bring up some labs and be able to discuss, I guess, components and stuff, and find any missing gaps on repeatability. And there's two main efforts on that, on the RI2, that's been happening. One of them is seeing how the tooling for the CNF testbed can be used. I think overall, the stage that we're at is getting software up and being able to discuss how it meets different requirements for both the RI2 requirements for testing, as well as what type of coverage that we have for RA. So some of that's more of exploration. And then as far as specifically doing any type of SDN testing or capabilities in the CNF testbed, that's definitely open. So if there's a desire to do some type of testing on the CNF testbed and have the capability to deploy a SDN along with the Kubernetes cluster and test use cases, that's maybe I should say desired. We want contributions on testing use cases. Right now, the CNF testbed, you think of it as it's a toolbox and with examples of different technology. So it's open to that. It happens to be something that can be used for RI. It's also the CNTT RI2. It's also something that we've been able to use for the CNF conformance, but the CNF conformance is not tied to the CNF testbed. We, in fact, do testing on kind, and we could test on any type of bare metal as well, Kubernetes that's running on a certified Kubernetes with extensions. So we're doing some testing with Multis extensions, and I'm sure we'll end up testing with other things, maybe DANM. So I don't see any type of conflict with having that.
So in that case, we can in parallel work with you for specifically what I was thinking about is we can bring Tungsten Fabric as an SDN into, because that's what we are looking at bringing into CNTT OPNF lab. And rather than waiting and first doing it over there and then bringing it to CNCF TUG, we can in parallel work on it. So perhaps I will ping you offline and maybe we can discuss that in detail as to what's the best way to go about it then. Thank you for clarifying.
Sounds good. Look forward to talking with you more about that, Sukhdev.
Thanks. All right. Okay. Thanks. Bye.
All right. Does anyone else on the call, Bill, I'm going to call out some people, Bill or anyone else that was on the CNTT virtual, have some info for a recap? Mention the restructuring. I know that these were part of the conversations on the RA2 chapters, and part of the discussions in the virtual conference was about that. And PRs have been open, and some of those got merged with the restructuring. Part of the stuff was about extensions and add-ons and other things, maybe even related to like the SDN comment, but CNI discussions were, CNIs and other add-ons were part of those discussions, and some of the, I could just post, but this PR for the restructuring and essentially clarifications on what are specifications, what are implementation specific items, and then so on from there.
Taylor, are you presenting anything, by the way? Because I'm not seeing.
I'm not presenting. I posted links into the Zoom.
Okay.
I mean, I could bring it up, but
no, that's fine. That's fine. I just wanted to check.
So I think you have summarized very well, Taylor, in terms of the RI2 and conformance, the understanding and the gaps and whatnot. So those are being looked at right now as we speak. And well, that's about it, I guess.
The conference was a large one. It was I would say it seemed like a mix of CNTT, the ONAP, as well as OPNFV, and I see Jim Baker, you're on the line, but there was a lot. It was a multi-track conference, so I definitely wasn't participating in all of them. I couldn't be on multiple places, but if anyone wants to give any feedback on some of the other items, that would be relevant and interesting for folks.
Yeah, just a quick add-on. The recordings from the sessions are available in the schedule page. There should be a recording link in each of the sessions. So if you review that and see anything of interest, feel free to watch the recording. They'll probably only be alive for about 30 days following the conference. Okay, is my audio alive?
It is, Jim, thanks. Is there going to be a YouTube channel as well with the recordings?
We hadn't planned on that, Taylor, but certainly we're talking about our June technical discussions right now and planning those out. And we have heard this request before, so that is something we're trying to set up for the June timeframe.
It could be nice. LFN, Google, a YouTube channel, and then a playlist for the events.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the suggestion. I will make sure the virtual event programming team clearly understands that.
All right. Are there plans to use the same platform, the Q chat?
We got kind of
Kiko
mixed
chat?
reviews. Yeah, the Kiko chat, mixed reviews on that in that it's a thin wrapper over the top of Zoom. So the overall conference experience or virtual conference experience was not significantly enhanced by its use, other than just making it easier for you to navigate Zoom links. We observed that there was very low uptake in the common spaces. We had defined a couple hallway channels and a ad hoc meeting channel, none of which got used in any significant fashion. So Kiko Chat did not end up enhancing our overall experience. So we are looking at some other platforms as well.
All right. Zoom links directly from the wiki could be nice.
Yeah, that's typically how we've done it in the past, and that's how about half of the participants navigated this session as well. Is they just took the Zoom links that were in the wiki at the top of the schedule for each day and just clicked on those if they wanted to sit in, and that was good enough for most folks, or at least half the folks. Based on survey data, of course.
All right.
Yeah, we continue. I'm sure CNCF is struggling with the same topics of, how do we create interesting and engaging dialogue in this era of virtual events. So we're all struggling with it and looking for different tools. And I'm sure there's going to be some process of discovery we all stumble upon and eventually converge on the good ideas. We'll see.
All right. Does anyone have any other questions or comments about the virtual conference or CNF conformance, CNF testbed, any of these topics?
Yeah, I may have put this in the feedback that I provided. I think the using the wiki as the schedule can become quite difficult to navigate as someone who wants to kind of arrange my calendar and work out what I need to join when, and having something as an example like the thing that I think it was Scott sent out, I can't remember the name of it, or Shed, which I know we use for KubeCon and other events. It just makes it easy to sync the sessions between my calendar, so that I can choose the ones I want to join or I need to join, etc. And then when it's done, it's kind of one more admin task I don't have to do.
Yeah, their tool is called Team Up.
Team Up, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a good. That was an improvement, I thought, but it still had the things in a separate app rather than being able to sync it with my calendar. Would be the main feedback on that side of it.
Yes, I can tell you, Tom, as a event coordinator, the amount of last moment shuffling of agendas is the item that makes these other auxiliary calendar invitations per hour very challenging for us, just because there is a fair amount of shuffling.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay.
But we do understand the requirement and want to try and fulfill that, because I get it, right? I want a calendar event for the session with the Zoom link embedded in my calendar at the right time. So yeah, we totally get it.
Cool. Thanks, Jim.
All right.
Hey, Taylor.
Yes.
Some discussion about publishing a white paper on the last call. So
Okay.
did that made it through? Is it? It would be great to get a color on that.
Sure. So the prologue, Cloud Native Thinking for Telecommunications, that's, I think, pretty close to publication. If it's not, I don't know if it's been pushed out fully, but that can be viewed on the TUG GitHub, and there's a few others. So maybe something that could be thought of as like a reference set of documents that's published as a Gitbook is the Cloud Native Networking that has the Cloud Native Network preamble and other things. That's been used for material for a lot of the other papers. That's available, and there's a link in the notes for that. Deploying the Cloud Native Network functions in a telecom service provider. I believe that's primarily a Google Doc, and there's a lot of comments on that. The other one that was mentioned, and maybe Dan, if you're here, you can speak to that, but there's a paper that's going to be coming out about Cloud Native conformance.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get a draft from Gavin that we can be sharing with his working group in the next couple of weeks. That's all I've got, Taylor.
Yeah, so that it's from what I've gathered on that paper, that's to go along with, there's the slides that Dan has on the CNF conformance, and then of course there's a lot of documentation on the GitHub page. So this white paper would go along with that to help communicate the goals and what you get out of using the conformance suite. I think that's the one that you may be referencing from the last TUG meeting.
Yeah, yeah,
Pravin?
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
That's right.
great. All right.
So I got one more thing. It's a little bit of not a diversion, but it's orthogonal to some of the efforts that we have here at this point. So last week I did a CNCF webinar on zero trust. That is a technology that I would recommend some people here start familiarizing yourself with, because it could be a fantastic path towards future things that we're going to end up trying to tackle in the industry. So when we start looking at things like multi-organizational, multi-site edge data centers and so on, then these can serve as primitives that are very well known in the cloud native space that we can build upon. And it specifically focuses on workload identity. I post the link in the announcement section of the Google Doc.
Thanks, Frederick. There's also a YouTube link attached. All right. So the next Telecom user group meeting is Monday, the 18th at 11 UTC. And if there's nothing else, we'll see you, everyone, at the next Telecom user group meeting.
Thanks for the call.
Thanks, everyone.